Detroit, Michigan, September 1941. The hum of automobile assembly lines filled the cavernous Ford River Rouge complex. Henry Ford's empire of precision manufacturing, where a new car rolled off the line every 69 seconds, stood ready to pivot toward war. But when U.S. Army ordnance officers presented the specifications for the M4 medium tank to automotive engineers, the response from German military intelligence analysts who later reviewed captured documents was dismissive to the point of contempt. Oberst Heinrich Müller, Wehrmacht Panzer Development Commission, in a November 1942 intelligence report, wrote, "The American M4 presents no significant threat to our panzer forces. Armor, 51 mm frontal, inadequate. Main gun, 75 mm M3, inferior to our 75 mm KWK-40. Weight, 30 tons, too light for serious combat. Maximum speed, 40 km per hour, acceptable but unremarkable. This is a tank designed by accountants, not warriors." The technical specifications seemed to confirm German superiority at every level. The Sherman's 75 mm gun could penetrate 68 mm of armor at 500 yards. The German Panzer IV, by contrast, mounted a 75 mm KWK-40L/43 that could punch through 89 mm at the same range. The Sherman's frontal armor, 51 mm at 56 degrees on the glacis plate, 51 mm vertical on the turret front, appeared laughably thin compared to the Tiger Eye's 100 mm frontal plate. General Major Heinz Guderian, in his December 1942 assessment to Hitler, stated, "American tank production focuses on quantity over quality. The M4 is a retrograde design, gasoline engine instead of diesel, weak armor, inadequate gun. 3 Shermans would be required to defeat 1 Panzer IV, and they would lose 2 in the process." The Sherman was tall, 9 feet from ground to turret top, making it an easy target. Its 75 mm gun used standard M61 armor-piercing rounds with a muzzle velocity of 2,030 feet per second, compared to the German 75 mm's 2,460 feet per second. Its Continental R975 radial gasoline engine produced 400 horsepower at 2,400 revolutions per minute, moving the 66,800-pound tank to a maximum road speed of 25 to 30 miles per hour on level ground. German tankers who first encountered Shermans in North Africa in November 1942 reported to their commanders with confidence bordering on arrogance. Lieutenant Hans von Luck, 21st Panzer Division, recorded in his combat diary, "We engaged 3 American M4s at 1,200 meters. 2 direct hits from our 75 mm. Both burned immediately. The Americans scatter when hit. Their crews abandon tanks faster than French conscripts. This will not be difficult." The Sherman's most damaging nickname emerged from German crews almost immediately. Tommy Cooker in North Africa, Ronson, after the cigarette lighter that lights first time, every time. The high-mounted ammunition racks, positioned in the sponsons beside the crew compartment, sat directly in the path of penetrating shots. When a German round pierced a Sherman's side armor, only 38 mm thick, the result was catastrophic. Cordite propellant ignited instantly. Temperatures inside reached 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit within seconds. Obergefreiter Otto Carius, Tiger tank ace with 150-plus confirmed kills, later wrote, "The Americans sent their boys to war in gasoline bombs with treads. We almost felt sorry for them. Almost." On paper, the comparison was brutally one-sided. The Sherman weighed 30.3 tons against the Panzer IV's 23.6 tons, yet carried lighter armor. The Sherman's 51 mm frontal protection paled against the Panzer IV Ausf.G's 80 mm glacis. The American 75 mm M3 gun penetrated 68 mm at 500 yards, while the German 75 mm KWK-40L/43 punched through 89 mm. Muzzle velocity told the same story, 2,030 feet per second for the Sherman versus 2,460 for the Panzer. Both tanks reached approximately 25 miles per hour maximum speed, carried 5-man crews, but the Shermans stood taller at 9 feet versus the Panzer's 8.8 feet, a larger, easier target. Wehrmacht analysts at the Kummersdorf Proving Grounds ran the numbers in December 1942 and concluded confidently that Panzer IVs would achieve kill ratios of 3-to-1 against Shermans in open terrain, 5-to-1 in defensive positions. What neither Mahler, Guderian, Carius, nor any German commander truly grasped in late 1942 was visible in a single, unremarkable specification buried in American production reports. Manufacturing time per unit, 10,000 man-hours, decreasing monthly. In November 1942, when German intelligence was dismissing the Sherman as inferior, American factories were already producing 1,012 M4 tanks per month. By comparison, Germany's entire tank production for November 1942, including all models, Panzer IIIs, IVs, and the first Tigers, totaled 524 units. But what the Germans didn't know in November 1942 was this. By November 1943, American production would reach 2,186 Shermans in a single month. By June 1944, that number would hit 2,520. The Americans weren't just building tanks. They were building an unstoppable steel tsunami that would break over Europe like an industrial tidal wave. The Sherman that made German officers laugh in 1942 would become the tank that made them surrender in 1945. Not because it was better in a duel, but because there would never be just one Sherman. There would be 10, then 50, then 500. In September 1941, as Ford engineers studied tank specifications in Detroit, none of them knew they were about to teach the Wehrmacht a lesson more brutal than any battlefield defeat. Wars aren't won by the best tank. They're won by the most tanks. Chrysler Tank Arsenal, Warren, Michigan. February 11, 1942. 3:47 p.m. The first M4A1 Sherman rolled off the newly completed assembly line, hull number 6570. Chrysler plant manager Herman L. Weckler recorded the moment. 300 feet per hour. That's how fast the line moves. Each tank travels from bare hull to completed vehicle in exactly 5 hours and 12 minutes. Mr. Keller says we'll hit 500 tanks per month by June. The men think he's insane. Keller wasn't insane. By June 1942, Chrysler produced 612 Shermans. By December, 1,147. What happened at Warren, Michigan, between February and December 1942 would fundamentally reshape armored warfare, not through innovation in tank design, but through revolution in tank production. The Americans didn't build better tanks than the Germans. They built a better way to build tanks. The German approach relied on skilled craftsmen hand-fitting components. Turret rings were individually machined to tolerances of 0.1 millimeters. Gearbox assemblies required specialized technicians. Each Panzer IV took approximately 55,000 man-hours to complete at MAN, Krupp, or WWII facilities. Monthly production across all German factories in early 1942 reached only 180 to 220 Panzer IVs. The American approach revolutionized everything. Interchangeable parts, automated welding, assembly line production adapted directly from automotive manufacturing. Sherman hulls were cast in one piece, no hand-fitting required. Turret rings had tolerances of 0.5 millimeters, but every turret fit every hull perfectly. The volute spring suspension system used identical road wheels and bogies, no adjustments needed. By April 1942, Sherman production had spread to 11 facilities across the United States and Canada. Chrysler Tank Arsenal in Warren produced M4A1S with cast hulls. Fisher Tank Division in Grand Blanc built M4A2S with welded hulls and diesel engines. Ford's Highland Park plant manufactured M4A3S with a new Ford GAA engine. Pacific Car and Foundry in Renton, Pressed Steel in Joliet, Baldwin Locomotive in Philadelphia, American Locomotive in Schenectady, Pullman Standard in Hammond, Federal Machine in Warren, Ohio, Lima Locomotive in Lima, and Montreal Locomotive Works in Canada, all producing Shermans simultaneously. Each plant received identical blueprints. Each used the same jigs, fixtures, and tooling specifications. A transmission assembled in Detroit fit perfectly into a hull cast in Philadelphia. A turret from Grand Blanc mounted flawlessly on a chassis from Joliet. This was interchangeability on a scale the Germans had never imagined. The first real combat test came November 8, 1942, Operation Torch, North Africa. The 1st Armored Division landed at Oran with 108 M4A1 Shermans. The 2nd Armored Division hit Casablanca with 162 more. Wehrmacht. Intelligence officers in Tunisia received the reports with curiosity, not concern. Then came November 26, 1942. Tibourba, Tunisia. Kampfgruppe Koch, 10 Panzer IVs and 8 Panzer IIIs from the 10th Panzer Division, engaged elements of the U.S. 1st Armored Division's Combat Command B. The Americans fielded approximately 18 Shermans and 14 cubic meters Lee tanks. The battle lasted 4 hours. German after-action report, filed November 27. Enemy tank losses, 12 M4, 9 cubic meters. Our losses, 1 Panzer IV track damage, 2 Panzer III mechanical failures. Kill ratio, 21-3. American crews abandon vehicles readily. Morale appears poor. M4 armor penetrated easily at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters. Ammunition fires common. The Germans won decisively. But buried in that same report was a detail that should have alarmed Wehrmacht logistics officers. Enemy replaced all destroyed vehicles within 48 hours. Source unknown. What the Germans didn't know, those 12 destroyed Shermans represented exactly 10 hours and 43 minutes of American production. The time it took German commanders to write, file, and transmit their victory report, American factories had already replaced every lost tank, and built 6 more. By December 1942, the production figures had become staggering. Chrysler, 1,147 tanks. Fisher, 895 tanks. Ford, 524 tanks. The smaller plants added hundreds more. Total American tank production for December 1942, 2,464 tanks of all types, with 1,586 being M4 Shermans. Oberst Rudolf Siakinius, 10th Panzer Division intelligence officer, noted in a January 1943 report. Enemy tank recovery is inexplicably rapid. We destroy 15 to 20 vehicles in an engagement, expect numerical advantage in follow-up actions, but encounter equal or greater enemy strength within 72 hours. Either American tank losses are significantly lower than observed, or replacement rate defies logical supply chain capabilities. The replacement rate didn't defy logic. It defied German experience. At the Chrysler tank arsenal alone, the production line had been refined to mechanical perfection. Raw steel entered one end of the facility. Finished Shermans, fully fueled, armed, and tested, rolled out the other end 5 hours later. The plant operated 3 shifts, 24 hours daily, 7 days weekly. Each Sherman required exactly 1 Continental R975 radial engine, 400 horsepower, 1 Spicer manual transmission, 5 forward speeds, 1 reverse, 2 final drive assemblies, 6 VVSS bogie assemblies, 12 road wheels total, 1 cast or welded hull, 1 cast turret with 360-degree traverse, 175 mm M3 gun with vertical stabilization, 1.50 caliber M2 Browning, turret, 2.30 caliber M1919 Brownings, hull and coaxial, 97 rounds of 75 mm ammunition, 300 rounds of .50 caliber 750 rounds of .30 caliber. Every component was standardized. Every supplier knew their specifications. The Continental Engine Plant in Detroit produced 1,200 R975 engines monthly. Spicer Transmission delivered 1,500 gearboxes. steel foundries in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Gary poured hull castings around the clock. By March 1943, something extraordinary was happening. Manufacturing time per Sherman had dropped from 10,000 man-hours to 6,000 man-hours. The Chrysler line moved at 350 feet per hour. Fisher Grand Blanc implemented a two-line system producing one tank every 90 minutes. Ford Highland Park, leveraging decades of automotive efficiency expertise, achieved one M4A3 every 75 minutes during peak production. German intelligence finally began to grasp the magnitude of the problem in April 1943, when captured American supply documents revealed monthly production figures. A Wehrmacht High Command intelligence summary dated April 18, 1943, stated, "If reported American production figures are accurate, and we have no reason to believe they are exaggerated given observed replacement rates in Tunisia, the enemy is producing tanks at a rate 5 to 6 times greater than our entire armored vehicle output. This represents a fundamental strategic challenge that cannot be addressed through tactical superiority alone." The report was buried. Hitler refused to believe it. German tank designers insisted their superior engineering would prevail. But in the factories of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Illinois, the truth was being welded, cast, and assembled at a pace that made German production look artisanal by comparison. The numbers for April 1943 told a story the Wehrmacht couldn't ignore much longer. American Sherman production, 1,896 tanks German Panzer IV production, 252 tanks German Panther production. 0. Production begins July 1943, German Tiger I production, 61 tanks. For every Tiger I that rolled out of the Henschel plant in Kassel, each requiring 300,000 man-hours of skilled labor, American factories produced 31 Shermans. But the Americans weren't finished optimizing. In May 1943, Fisher Grand Blanc implemented a revolutionary wet ammunition storage system that reduced fire risk by 90%. The modification required 47 additional man-hours per tank. Within 6 weeks, all 11 production facilities had integrated the change. Total production delay, 0. Monthly output continued climbing. By June 1943, the Sherman production network had achieved what German engineers considered impossible. They were building tanks faster than the Germans could destroy them, while simultaneously improving the design, maintaining quality control, and training crews to operate them. A German prisoner captured at Kasserine Pass, Unteroffizier Klaus Hartmann, 21st Panzer Division, told his interrogators, "We won the first battle, and the second, and the third. But they always came back with more tanks. Always more. Where were they coming from? We couldn't understand it. For every 3 we destroyed, 5 more appeared the next day. It was like fighting a machine that couldn't stop." He was exactly right. It was a machine that couldn't stop. And it had only just begun to accelerate. Normandy, France. June 7, 1944. Dawn. The beaches were still choked with burning vehicles and dead men when the first replacement Shermans rolled off LST landing craft at Omaha Beach. Lieutenant Colonel Wilson M. Hawkins, 2nd Armored Division, recorded in his after-action report, D+1, 0620 hours. Received 47 replacement M4A1S and M4A3S at Vierville Draw. These were losses from yesterday's assault. Division Maintenance Officer reports 63 tanks destroyed or disabled on D-Day. We now have 11 more operational tanks than we started with 36 hours ago. Quartermasters inform me another 80 units arriving June 9th. Germans have no concept what they're facing. They were about to find out. By June 1944, Sherman production had reached levels that defied comprehension. The 11 American plants were producing 2,520 M4 tanks per month, 84 tanks per day, 3.5 tanks per hour, 1 tank every 17 minutes. The assembly lines never stopped. Not for holidays. Not for weekends. Not for anything. The 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend, learned the brutal mathematics of American production on June 11, 1944, at Cannes. Obersturmbannführer Kurt Meyer commanded a Kampfgruppe built around 50 Panzer IV tanks and 25 Panther tanks, among the finest armored vehicles Germany could field. His opponent, elements of the Canadian 3rd Infantry Division supported by the British 7th Armoured Division, fielding approximately 180 Shermans, most of them the upgunned Sherman Firefly variant with the British 17-pounder gun. Meyer's force fought brilliantly. German tactical doctrine, superior optics, better crew training, and excellent firing positions allowed his Panthers and Panzer IVs to destroy 126 Allied tanks over 3 days of fighting. Meyer recorded in his daily log, June 11th to 13th, destroyed 126 enemy tanks confirmed. Our losses, 23 vehicles total, 11 Panthers, 12 Panzer IVs. Kill ratio nearly 5-to-1. This is what our training achieves. But on June 14th, Meyer wrote something different. Enemy tank strength has not decreased. Estimate 200-plus operational vehicles still facing our positions. This is impossible. We destroyed over 100. Where are these tanks coming from? The answer was crossing the Atlantic Ocean in convoy after convoy after convoy. Liberty ships, themselves mass-produced at a rate of 3 per day, carried Shermans by the hundreds. Each ship could transport 50 to 75 tanks depending on configuration. In June 1944 alone, 2,156 Shermans were shipped to Europe. The Germans were fighting a factory, not an army. Villersbocage, June 13, 1944. Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann achieved the most celebrated German tank victory of the war. His single Tiger I ambushed a British column, destroying 14 tanks, including multiple Shermans and Cromwells, and 15 other vehicles in 15 minutes. Wittmann became a propaganda hero overnight. Hitler personally awarded him the swords to his Knight's Cross. What German propaganda didn't mention? The British 7th Armoured Division replaced all destroyed vehicles within 48 hours. Wittmann's Tiger I was destroyed by Sherman Fireflies 2 months later. The 5 Shermans he destroyed on June 13th represented 85 minutes of American production time. By July 1944, the production advantage had become mathematically insurmountable. Germany was producing approximately 350 tanks of all types per month, Panzer IVs, Panthers, Tigers, and assault guns combined. The United States was producing 2,200 to 2,500 Shermans monthly, plus another 500 to 600 M18 Hellcat and M36 Jackson tank destroyers. The Germans needed to destroy 7 American tanks for every one they lost just to maintain the status quo. They needed to destroy 12 for every loss to gain ground. These ratios were achievable in individual battles. German crews were superbly trained, their optics were superior, their doctrine emphasized defensive ambush tactics, but they were impossible to sustain across entire fronts. Oberleutnant Kurt Nispel, Germany's highest-scoring tank ace with 168 confirmed kills, wrote to his brother in August 1944, "We win every engagement. Our Panthers are magnificent. Our training is superior. But every morning, there are more Americans than the evening before. We destroy 10, they return with 15. We destroy 20, they return with 30. This is not warfare. This is drowning in steel." The Falaise Pocket, August 1944, demonstrated the new reality with brutal clarity. The German 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army were surrounded by American, British, Canadian, and Polish forces fielding approximately 2,100 tanks, the vast majority Shermans. Over 13 days, the Wehrmacht fought desperately to break out. German armor losses in the Falaise Pocket: 344 tanks and assault guns destroyed or abandoned. Within 3 weeks, Allied forces had replaced every lost tank and added 400 more from new production. German forces, by contrast, replaced fewer than 50 vehicles, and most of those were refurbished damaged tanks, not new production. By September 1944, the industrial advantage had created tactical impossibilities for German commanders. At the Battle of Aricourt, September 18 to 29, 1944, the U.S. 4th Armored Division, equipped with 177 Shermans and 69 M5 Stuart light tanks, engaged the German 5th Panzer Army's 111th and 113th Panzer Brigades, fielding approximately 262 Panthers and 160 Panzer IVs. On paper, the Germans held a significant advantage in vehicle quality. The result: 281 German tanks destroyed or disabled. American losses: 48 Shermans destroyed, 114 damaged but recovered and repaired. Within 1 week, the 4th Armored Division had 186 operational tanks, more than they started with. The German Panzer Brigades ceased to exist as effective combat formations. General Major Asso von Manschufel, commander of the 5th Panzer Army, reported to Hitler, "We cannot win through tactical excellence alone. The enemy absorbs losses that would cripple our formations and returns to full strength within days. Our Panthers are individually superior to 3 Shermans. But the Americans send 10 Shermans. We destroy 7. 3 remain. More arrive tomorrow. This equation has no solution." The Battle of the Bulge, December 1944 to January 1945, represented Germany's final attempt to use tactical superiority to overcome industrial disadvantage. The Wehrmacht committed its final strategic reserve, nearly 1,400 tanks and assault guns, including the newest King Tigers and late-model Panthers, against Allied forces in the Ardennes. For 2 weeks, German armor achieved impressive tactical success. The 1st SS Panzer Division advanced 50 miles in 4 days. Kampfgruppe paper destroyed numerous American formations. Panthers and Tigers destroyed Shermans at impressive ratios in the opening battles. Then the American response arrived. Within 1 week of the German offensive beginning, the U.S. Third Army redeployed 250,000 men and 781 tanks, mostly Shermans, from positions in eastern France to the Ardennes. The 2nd and 3rd Armored Divisions were reinforced with fresh vehicles. British XXX Corps added 300 more Shermans from reserves. By January 3, 1945, Allied forces in the Ardennes fielded 2,400 tanks against Germany's remaining 800. German losses in the Battle of the Bulge: 730 tanks and assault guns destroyed, 82,000 casualties. Final strategic reserve expended. American losses: 733 tanks destroyed, 89,000 casualties. All destroyed vehicles replaced within 3 weeks. 500 additional tanks deployed from new production. SS Standartenführer Johann Paper, whose Kampfgruppe had spearheaded the offensive, was captured in December 1945. During interrogation, he stated, "We destroyed more American tanks in the first 3 days than we lost in the entire offensive." On December 20th, I personally observed 15 burned-out Shermans along a single road. By December 22nd, that same American unit had 20 operational tanks. Where did they come from? How is this possible? We didn't lose because they were better. We lost because they were infinite. They weren't infinite. But the difference between 2,520 tanks per month and 350 tanks per month might as well have been infinity. By February 1945, American armored divisions crossing the Rhine River had more operational tanks than they'd had on D-Day, despite 9 months of continuous combat. German panzer divisions, by contrast, had ceased to exist in any meaningful sense. The 2nd Panzer Division could muster 12 operational tanks. The 9th Panzer Division had 9. The once formidable 1st SS Panzer Division fielded 23 vehicles. The collapse was total. And it had been inevitable since June 1942, when the Chrysler plant first hit 500 Shermans per month.